Okay, we are recording. Okay, Shawn, all I want you to do first is I want you just to introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, what you do. Go for it.
Sure, sure. So I was a bit of an entrepreneur in the music industry. That's where I got my start. I was a creative individual. And around 2005, I started at Le Cordon Bleu College in culinary arts. And I absolutely fell in love with culinary arts, the educational aspect of it, the personalities. I felt at home. I, being a creative and being in the music industry, there was a lot of parallels. There was people that were very passionate, and I was very passionate about what I was doing. So I stayed until 2016. I had about a 2-year hiatus and learned a lot through, about culinary arts and culinary education and in the demographic and the people that I serve now. So last year, I decided that I was going to help in a very specific way, and that was to create a resource for food entrepreneurs. One thing I noticed at culinary education is that students started wanting to become Gordon Ramsay or wanting to have a restaurant overnight. And I watched them struggle year after year with really understanding the concept of business and entrepreneurship. And I even struggled for a while too when I was a musician and tried to launch certain things. That's why I went and got an MBA to understand it. And so now I created a platform, and the leading resource is a digital magazine where we talk only about business and entrepreneurship to help food entrepreneurs build and grow businesses. So that's a little bit of the evolution. In short, I'm from Orlando, born and raised, one out of about 100. They tattoo us on the back of the neck to keep track because everyone comes from other states. But outside of that, I just had a little girl 7 months ago. I'm completely in love, head over heels, and so we just started a family, my wife and I. So there's a little snapshot.
Awesome. And how long have you had the magazine?
Actually, the issue in June will be 1 year. So the June issue will be 1 year. I just emailed Elizabeth Faulkner. She's going to be on the cover of the June issue, and just told her, "Hey, you were on the 1 year issue," and she was excited. We're excited. So and it's going really well.
Wow, you have definitely grown a lot in a year and really made some connections.
Mm, yes, yes, yes. And now I yes and no, because it was a 10-year time period that was in culinary education, connected with people, fostered relationships. So yes, in less than a year, I built this platform with thousands of people. But really, it was about 11 years in the making. I always like to say.
I started to say, if you did all of that in a year, we're going to have another webinar about how you made all those connections in 1 year.
Sure.
Well, let's go ahead and get started with what, people really want to know. So, one of the things that, and these are in no particular order, guys. So they're just kind of thoughts that I've heard you guys say over the past several years. Hiring strategies. What are your top strategies for hiring employees? Since employers have a tendency to hire in their own likeness. When we do that, we get people that are just like us, which is kind of a bad combination, and then we end up firing ourselves. So, number one, what are your top strategies for hiring good employees?
Yeah, so I want to break it down, that question, because there is a major dynamic at play, and that is hiring in your likeness. And I think that deserves a talking point that a lot of people don't realize that they do. Everybody has experiences that creates a filter for them, and so they become familiar with who they are and who they see in other people. So they hire. A lot of people sometimes hire in the likeness, and that's a big problem sometimes, especially years down the road, because it creates blind spots. What if there was 100 Shawns that worked at a company? Then we're going to be on the same wavelength. Great, we're going to have a great time. However, there's going to be some blind spots, right? So that's one big thing that you got to really pay close attention to, is just you got to be careful not to hire in your likeness. And how do you do that? And that is, you have to build some things in place in that hiring process. So let's say that you have 20 resumes, right? So I'm going to give you an actionable something that I used to do. 20 resumes in place. I'm going to look at those resumes and I'm going to create a scoring system, 1 to 10. And from there, I'm going to score them, and I'm going to put my scores somewhere or on a separate document. And then I'm going to pass those resumes to somebody else. And I'm not going to tell them what I think about those candidates. I'm just going to pass the resumes to somebody else. From there, they're going to score them on a 1 to 10 scale. And I'll even try and pass it to a third person or a fourth person. If I can get 4 people that do that with me, now I take that average and I create a baseline. And it says I'm only going to interview 6s or above, 7 or above, 8 or above. And from there, it kind of helps reduce that bias that you have when you're looking at a resume, and it just helps reduce that bias essentially. That's the key point. So now you're giving some people an opportunity that you might have looked over, but other people saw something in. So that's one thing that I would say.
Okay. So, before you can even get these people to, so that you don't hire in your likeness, our biggest thing, it seems like, is that we can't even find good employees to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this thing that I have this whole process that I do. First of all, I have to find them, and we're going to talk about where to find them. But once I find them, then I have to get them to send me a resume. If they send me a resume, and if they can spell the word chef right, and if their grammar looks good, and if they bother to spell check, then I'll call them. So if they answer the phone and can speak somewhat intelligently, then I schedule an in-person interview. If they show up for the interview, which that's the hardest part, because if I have 10 people scheduled, 9 will not show up.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they pass through that interview, then I have them stage for free. And then if they show up for that, so you kind of see what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, what are some of your best resources for finding good people? And number 2, then how do you vet them?
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm a huge fan of attracting people.
Okay.
Right. So you have to think about the message that you're putting out into the world that the individuals that you want eventually to attract are going to see. So you have to really think about what is that message, and remove yourself from your business or as a leader and read that message and ask yourself, would I apply to this job? Would I apply to this this entry level job? Would I jump through these hoops because of this message right here? Right? Would I stage for free? Would I do everything that you mentioned based upon the message that I read? And that's a big aha for a lot of people, is that the message that they're putting out there, yeah, sure, it may be cookie cutter, it may be standard, it may check all those boxes, but does it really speak to that person that's going to want to go above and beyond and do everything and jump through hoops because it's a great opportunity? So I think that's where a lot of people can start and redesign that message to where you're attracting people. So what does that look like in real terms? If I saw a message that said something like, I put out something for a cook position, and I say something to the effect that you want to have a restaurant one day, I want to teach you, come in and we're going to put together a plan. And that's a part of the hiring process and program. That's a part of the employment, is that I have a succession plan in place that teaches you how do you get your own restaurant. Because I got my own restaurant, I'm going to show you how to get your own restaurant. And in the meantime, you're going to cook for me, I'm going to pay you, and you're going to learn a great deal, and I'm going to send you on your way at some point, right? So do you have a process in place that's going to help people like that? And can you communicate it? If you have that in place, if you have succession planning in place, if you invest in your employees from a training standpoint, if you have those processes, you can clearly create a message that's then going to attract people.
Then I'm going to ask the second part of that question again.
Mm-hmm.
What I have realized, and there's a lot of people on the call on this webinar that are saying, well, I would never do that. Why would I hire anybody that would train and take all my stuff with them and then possibly try to do it better than me?
The fear factor. Fear factor. Yeah. So the fear factor. So here's what I know about human behavior, is that a lot of people never feel like they're ready. How many people, for the business owners right here, or even you, Deb, how long did it take you to eventually make that leap from idea, the thought in your mind? Maybe you were a teenager, maybe you're in your 20s, but how long did it take you to make that leap officially? And think about the general population. How many people actually make the leap into entrepreneurship or launching something, right? So it's a small amount, right? So this is what I've realized. when I invest in employees' long-term growth, whatever they want to do and wherever they want to go, then they tend to stay longer because a lot of people never feel like they're ready anyway. And
Right.
if you're providing them so much value, they're going to work extremely hard in your business, extremely hard in your business in the meantime. And you know what? If they go out and they maybe become a competitor, if I have my business down pat and I am in service 100% to my customers and I provide a great, just an awesome product or service, I'm not going to be concerned about them. And if you're afraid of trade secrets, I mean, look at Heinz, right? They keep the secret formula in a vault. How many people have ever touched that secret formula? So there's ways that you can kind of protect yourself if you have some sort of secret recipe, formula per se. But I think it's key that you can't be afraid of that. If you invest in your employees, they're going to work extremely hard. And at the end of the day, that's what you want. Every single day, you want someone to treat your business as though it's theirs, even though it's not. Right? And if they feel like they're growing in some sort of direction, they're going to work very, very, very hard for you.
I've realized that the concept of growing employees, and that's something that we're going to get into here in just a little bit, is that I have realized that the more I offer to share, not necessarily give them more money, but share. And I've started giving a lot of my employees a percentage. I mean,
there you go.
A little bit lower pay, but then a percentage. I just met with my head chef and kitchen manager today. I said, let's do pop-up dinners. Let's do them once a month. I don't really want to do them, but I know that you need to make more money. I already pay him well, but something just happened in his life where he needs to make more money or I could possibly lose him. And what I said was, let's start doing pop-up dinners. I'll take a percentage, you take a percentage, and we'll call it done at that point. I wanted to say something, go back to what you said about hiring people in your likeness. I made a really big mistake doing that. I just had a head chef and kitchen manager that I had to fire. I hired her because she was so much like me. And I thought, I've done it. I have duplicated me. She is just like me. She's going to run this business like me. And she stole $15,000 from me. Because I saw little red flags here and there, and I thought, she would never do that because I would never do that. Big mistake. I hire people now that are unlike me, but are better than me, is what I do. Because I want them to cook better than me. I want them to do other things better than me so that I can manage all that. Where do you find, so after I ask you this question, I'm going to tell the listeners where I find good people and how I find them. So how is it, what websites, apps, whatever it is that you use, what do you use first to say, I need a good person for, a head chef or a cook or a dishwasher? Where do you go to find those? What are your best resources?
Here's what I'll lead with. Birds of a feather flock together.
True.
The reason why I say that is whenever I needed employees, I went to my best employees.
Okay.
My best employees have people that they know that they can reach out to because I knew that birds of a feather flock together. If I've got 10 great employees, I had the possibility to find 10 great people. It may take a little time, so I encourage people to build that into the culture. Hiring is not, the moment that you need a person for your business, you've already lost. You're too late, right? Now it becomes a scramble, and the worst thing that can happen is when you're in that position because you're just going to hire to fill a need, not for what's best for the business. So you want to constantly talk to your employees, provide a great atmosphere, great environment that they're going to want to work in, that they're going to want to recommend people, and ask them from time to time, do you have anybody that you've crossed that wants to join the team, that sees the opportunity that you have and wants to be a part of what we're doing? And don't be afraid to ask that. Maybe twice a month, build it in, put it on a calendar to make sure that you're asking your employees that, because the more you ask them, the more they're going to ask people that they run into. And guess what? They may cross somebody out into the industry who does a great job. And because you are constantly asking employees for people, right? Just so that you have a list of people, they may cross someone and say, listen, hey, we're always looking for top talent. Are you interested? And there's that one day when that person says, you know what, I'm tired of where I'm at right now. Yes, I'm interested. Now you have someone on the back burner. You always want to have 3 to 5 people always on the back burner that you can go to potentially. So that's the first thing that I'm going to say is that whenever I was in a dire need, birds of a feather flock together. I go to my best employees. Outside of that, you know, some of the people that are probably in the chat here, that there's varying businesses, business types, business models, all those different things. I know that in the culinary industry, industry is starting to take, industry.co is starting to take shape. I talked with Cody, I think a couple of months ago. Outside of that, you know, one thing, and this isn't like a necessarily a resource, but something you can think of because you probably have different businesses, is that think about the characteristics, behaviors, psychographics of the people that you want to hire, and find careers that parallel those same behaviors, characteristics, and psychographics. Because now you can not necessarily poach from your competitor or anything like that, but you can poach from a different industry that can cross over really well. And I know there's technical skills involved with that too. You know, they know how to cook or something like that, depending on your business. So I don't have too many laundry list of resources like that outside of maybe industries, maybe one particular website. But I think more importantly, the strategy behind it is cultivate a strong environment that people want to work there. Your top people want to recommend people, and just constantly ask them about it so it becomes a part of that culture. And eventually you wake up, I promise you, 4, 6, 9 months later, and you just have a pool of talent that's coming in.
Got it. Mark, I saw that you left a question in the chat, and that's about I was just about to say that, and hopefully this answers your question. So that is one of the things.
I see it now.
Yeah, that is one of the things that I do is from the good employees that I already have, I try to get them to bring more. Now, culinary, there's so few people in culinary, it seems like, but there's way more jobs than there are people to fill them. So it's a very kind of a tough situation, or there are people to fill them, but there's a reason why they're available to be hired. So, and when I work with different chefs to find their very first employees, I always want to make sure first that, you know, number one, are you ready to have your first employee? So in other words, have you bumped your head against the ceiling so much that you cannot grow unless you get some help with, and fill in the blank. Usually what happens when chefs hire their first employee, it is either an admin or it is a prep cook / kitchen assistant. People call them all kinds of different things. You have to decide what that is for you. Sometimes it's taking the paperwork away. Sometimes it's helping you in the kitchen. Sometimes it's both. There's some great places that I found. I actually ask other people in the culinary industry. So I ask friends of friends. Mark, I hope this is answering your question. If it is not, then please put it in the chat. The second thing I do is, since like-minded people, just like you said, Shawn, all hang around with like-minded people, I will immediately put something out on Facebook, because I am friends with chefs all over the place. I'm in all the different, you know, chef this and chef that for different groups on Facebook. Different chefs follow me. I will simply put out on there, you know, my company, Savor's looking to grow. The position that we're looking for is X, whatever that is for you. PM me if anybody is interested. You do not have to go into a long drawn out chat of what the description of the job is or anything like that. Just looking to grow. See what you get back from that. The third thing that I do is I call the culinary schools. Because there are a lot of culinary schools out there where they should not step out of those doors as a chef. They should step out as a cook, maybe some of them even as dishwashers, as prep, whatever you call them in your company. You may have to type up a description. What I put in the chat is I have a description that I use, and what I do is I just change the job title. Because what I have found personally is I almost have to sell my company to the person coming in. It is no longer, I have a job for you, it's going to be this many hours, and I'm going to pay you this much money, and you're going to beat down my door. My job description talks about how unique we are, what benefits there is to working for us. Very few nights and weekends. Our menu is going to change every week. You get to cook with ingredients that, you may not ever get to cook, before. We use small batch artisan cooking. I really promote the uniqueness of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Again, guys, email me. It's right there if you want it. I am happy to share it. I used to use Craigslist because I know a lot of you guys are saying, well, what about Craigslist? Craigslist worked for me a few times. The majority of the time it didn't work for me. But I think it's very industry specific. There is a website called goodfoodjobs.com, and I'm going to put it in the chat as well, goodfoodjobs.com. And I know a lot of people that have found some very qualified applicants on there also. There is also, some people have had a lot of good luck with Indeed.com. Here's the deal on Indeed. I have found some great people. You have to be very specific about what you are looking for. Indeed.com. Those two particular sites have worked very well for us. Believe it or not, there is another website called internships.com. College kids, culinary school, students, people that have just graduated are looking for internships on here for free or for, $10 an hour. Those are all the places that I go, but if I am not looking for somebody and somebody sends me a resume, I'll still contact them and say, I may need somebody very soon. Let's stay in contact with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, Mark, I hope that answers your questions, but that's all the ways that you can find employees. And if you don't need a full-time employee, it's fine. It is perfectly okay to say, this is part-time, 20 hours a week. I look for it to grow to full-time very quickly. The other question that you guys are probably saying is, well, I don't want that responsibility. I know I need to grow, but won't somebody want full-time? I have never in 15 years guaranteed anybody's hours. I have my head chef and kitchen manager salary. They always have been, but anybody that I hire, I tell them, I cannot guarantee your hours. This is how many hours I think you're going to get. So I don't know if that helps you guys. A lot of you guys probably don't believe me that people will actually take a job based upon that. I promise you that they will. So let me go ahead and ask Shawn a few other questions.
And Deb, I just want to follow up for Mark, because you had mentioned the culinary schools. You'll get great traction and it'll happen a lot faster for you if you just go straight to the career services representative, right?
Oh.
So instead of just calling the front desk or trying to get in contact with whoever it is, career services is typically the department in every single culinary school, and they're the ones that handle the students. Don't try and get in contact with the director because they're sometimes really busy, but career services representative, if you go on LinkedIn, that's a great resource to be able to find them. Just type in career services representative at whatever culinary school that might be around you, or just type that in and see, and you can narrow it down geographically and start finding some of those names and reaching out to them directly.
A lot of times whenever I call and I say, who is it that, I can talk to, I need a chef, I need a cook, I need whatever. And then I've also found that has a tendency, even if it gets to the career services director, that has a tendency to get lost. So I will type up a description and I'll actually drive it up there myself and put it on a bulletin board.
There you go. Yeah.
All of those things are very helpful. So some more questions. How do you trust them? So any thoughts on once you hire your first employee? Because I know a lot of people here may have a few employees or even their first employee. How do you hire your first employee and then say, I'm going to run to the store and then I'm going to run to Restaurant Depot. You're going to be here for 2 or 3 hours and I trust you to do this. Mm-hmm. Much more, take that a little bit further, and this is going to strike fear in the hearts of everybody listening. I'm going to go on vacation. I'm going to leave you to run my business. tell me, how you can, there's ways to trust your team and how people can kind of get over that.
Yeah. So it's an evolution. It's definitely an evolution. And now trust, what I learned along the way, I could be wrong, but this is my philosophy that I learned along the way, is it's an action. It's like love. It's like friendship, right? So you give trust to get trust. I used to have that thought process that the employees had to earn my trust, right? That I had this wall and they had to earn my trust, and that someday I'm going to then open up and then trust them. And I think that's BS, because did your relationship with your partner that you're in a relationship with now, some of the best friends that you have, did you start off by saying, I'm going to wait to see if you love me, and then from there, I'm then going to open up and I'm going to give you love, and maybe I might marry you, or you best friends, think about those relationships. It started because you saw something, you gave a little, you got some in return. You gave more, you got some in return. And that's how I think people need to think about trust. Now, there's a clear line between trust and control of vital functions in your business that, if they go awry, become detrimental to the track that your business is on, right? So there's a clear line. I may trust somebody, but I'm not going to give them complete control, right? Especially not right away. I'm going to lead into that. I'm going to build up to giving them small tasks that they're going to do. And eventually we're going to build up to them, to me trusting that they can have control of those vital functions. So trust, very big. You got to give it in order to get it. Don't be the one that just kind of keeps that wall up. Now, how do you build up to that? Think about what you do as a owner. Think about all of the vital functions in the business. I mean, classify them, maybe put them on a tier, maybe have 1, 2, and 3 levels. 1 are the most critical things that have to get done or your business fails. 2 are right behind that. 3, if you make a mistake, there's a recovery period and it's not too bad. So there you go. Now you identify them, list them out. And once you do that, now that's how you start giving some of your employees the opportunity and a little rope to fail, but you give them level 3 tasks, right? Start with level 3 tasks first because they're recoverable, right? So start with that, allow them some rope to fail, see if they make a mistake. If they do, train them, allow them to do it again, and slowly but surely you start leading them up to that.
You also just struck hearts and fear in the hearts of the people on the call, because they just heard the word fail, which to them loss of money, which to them
Of course,
loss of business, which
yeah.
So I want to be real clear in what he's saying, and that I want to be completely honest too. When you decide to hire your first employee, they are going to fail. In fact, they're going to fail a lot. It's what you do with that failure and how you monitor it to help them grow. Because you don't want to be so much of a micromanager that you never allow their creative expression to come through. And you will at first, and you will either drive them away or they will love you for it. And that's just the way that it is. But as you start to have more and more employees, you will actually understand how to trust them. And here's one of the biggest ways that you're going to have in order to trust them is, I want to ask you the question, what if they do it better than you? So you prepare a service for a client, catering client, it's a cooking class, your personal chef client, you step away as the head chef at your restaurant because now you're finally going to grow it, whatever that is. And then all of a sudden you get some clients that say, wow, you've really improved I've had this before and it tastes so much better. The food is so much better this time around. Not that you sucked. I'm not saying that. But that's when you know that you have the right person in that place and that you can truly step away because you want them to be better than you. So you need to also, as chefs, prepare yourself for that ego to be hurt just a little bit, because it's going to happen. And honestly, it should happen. So you need to kind of keep that in mind as well. It's baby steps. Everything is baby steps. But the one thing I will tell you is listen to your gut. Listen to that little voice inside your head. You're going to question it at first, but only you know if you have the right person in that job. because maybe they're better suited for something else in your company or not in your company at all. I'm very serious about the first 90 days that I hire someone. I talk to them almost daily, and I tell them initially when I hire them, look, 90 days, we're both on probation here. If you don't like us at any time, you need to come to me and say, I don't really like this. And at any time during that, I can come to you and say, I think you're great, but you're just not a good fit. And it kind of takes the pressure off of everything that way.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you're not scared to hire somebody and take a chance. Let me see.
And I just want to say, really profound point there, that it's not just one-sided, right? As the employer saying that to the employee, that's a little tough to swallow. But when the employer says to the employee, this is as much of an evaluation period of you to us as it is us to you, it levels the playing field right there. I think that's absolutely critical.
It's a two-way street, because I can honestly tell you the employees I have left now, I love. And I have been through a lot with them and a lot of employees, and for good and bad reasons. I didn't do my due diligence, or even some that I did. And that's the other point I want to make is it's okay if you fail. The very first employee I ever hired was an admin, and I went through 3 of them. And in a 6-month period of time, I fired 2 people as my very first employees. So, but it's because I failed, and I didn't interview them well. I didn't listen. I didn't really know what I was looking for. So, it's also okay to fail. Some of you guys are sitting out there going, I would never do that to another person, to bring them on and decide they didn't work out and then fire them. Well, it happens, and it's really okay to do, because the decisions you would make as a person sometimes are very different than the decisions you would make as a business owner. Completely different. So tell me about, so now you found your first employee or your 10th employee, it doesn't really matter. Tell me some of the, and I know this may be a big question, so kind of break it up. Tell me about some of your best training practices to really get them to become good employees, instead of, and I'll be the first to admit, I have a tendency to go, well, there's the kitchen. Where's your knife? Here's how we do it. Let me know if you have questions. That's on me. Because, as a chef or a cook, you should be able to say, here's a recipe, get busy. Let me know if you have questions. Whereas an admin, they're sitting there staring at you until you take it all out of your head and show them what you need them to do. So any best kind of training practices that you have for us?
Yeah, so, and it'll vary between someone that has 1 employee versus multiple employees, right? So now I think the first thing that you have to do is you have to understand, where do you want that employee to go as the end result? And you have to understand, where are they starting at? And from there, once you understand point A and point B, you can break down what are the little mini milestones that they need to achieve or overpass along the way in order to finally be, quote, up to speed. So if you do not have and when I say training program, it doesn't have to be a robust training program, but at least an outline. If you don't have at least an outline of things that they need to go through, things that they need to learn about your company, and it's thoughtful and just not slapped together, then you're already starting behind the 8 ball, right? So I think that's the first step, is to make sure that you've got a solid outline. You know exactly what that position is going to call for when they start to when they're up to speed, and you've got little mini milestones in between. From there, like you said, Deb, you talk to your new hires almost daily in 90 days. It's so critical to have touch points. And as either business owners or leaders, things move so fast that communication can get lost, but you have to make it a priority. The worst thing that can happen is if you don't make it a priority, they have a botched training program, and you wake up in 90 days or 120 days, you spent this money, you invested some of this time, and now they're walking away because they just don't have the good feeling, or they're not performing at the level that you need them to perform. And so you have to kind of look at yourself in the mirror and ask, did I cause that? So it's a very tough pill to swallow. And I've been there. I've failed miserably at training some employees before, and that was the end result. So, some of the things, if you have a mid-sized team or larger team, and for the people that are starting out, maybe you can file this away. There's an adage, I think it goes, the teacher learns more than the student, something along those lines. And, I don't have the quote with me, but when I found that if I had employees that were deficient in a certain area, I would task them with training everyone in that area. Why? Because they now have to do the legwork to become at least somewhat knowledgeable to be able to present it or share it or teach it. And that the instructor oftentimes learns more than the student. So that was a nice best practice that I came across. Someone shared that with me one day. It rocked my world. I started doing that with team members, and I watched them grow exponentially. And then from there, there would be a training schedule. So again, it really depends on how many employees you have. At one point, I had up to about 28 or 30. And so I could break them off into little teams. And so each little team would have a training program at any given time. Maybe it was every week, maybe it was every other week. And so it was just a constant rotation of training. And even a lot of times, some of it was basics, right? Because, one thing as either a leader or owner, you think you may have trained the basics. It's common sense. But what I've come to find is common sense isn't always common practice, and that you have to continuously touch on some of those things, right? So it's always good to cycle back. Sometimes I would have a list of maybe 16, 17, 20 trainings, and we would cycle through them throughout the year. We do the first 4, next ones, go back to maybe some, so those are some of the strategies that I used to have in place.
So I know that some of you guys, are sitting there thinking too, well, I don't even have a job description. I don't have a training manual. Oh my God, how do I even do this in the first place? Here's the deal. Hiring your first employee is going to be imperfect. You kind of really I don't know that you ever get really great at it. When you hire your first employee, whoever that is, have them work side by side. It's perfectly okay. Have them work right next to you. The one thing that I wished I would have done when I hired my very first employee is, as I explained something to them, I wished I had written down, explained, how I want the chicken cut, explained, how I make out the grocery list. I wished that as they asked questions and I explained stuff to them, that I wrote those questions down and turned that into a training manual. Because since then, what had happened is, as I hired my next person, they asked the same questions, and I found myself repeating them again. It was over and over again. So guys, don't make it complicated. If you're hiring your first person, then have them work right beside you. Have them ask questions until they get it right to the way that you want it done. Document what they've asked you. Turn that into a very simple training manual. I don't care if you type it all in Word. Don't be complicated about it. You can even type it in Word and get something free called Dropbox. You can place it in Dropbox and you can send them the link to a training manual. Now, all this stuff is, pie in the sky stuff, because you guys are, if you're so busy, then you needed to hire somebody. When you hire somebody, you're thinking, I don't even have time to train them because I'm so busy. One of those things that you just kind of take the time for. And I know that Shawn was talking about milestones. What he's talking about milestones is, don't make that overly complicated too. Figure out what works for your schedule of when you're going to meet with them. So the first 90 days, minimally, you should kind of check in with them every day. How did it go today? But what I do is, about every other week, I will literally bring them in and sit them down and say, this is what I see. How are you doing? I ask them one question. How do I make your job better? When I ask them that question, they're always astonished, because then I get an honest answer of, I really don't understand how you do X. I really don't understand why you guys do it this way. I'm really struggling with. After that 90 days, then I meet with them about once a month for the first 6 months. And then after that, it's kind of once a quarter type of thing. So, and don't make it overly complicated. Just sit down and ask them, how are you doing? What do you need from me? What I wish I would have done at the very beginning is I wished I would have documented everything I said to them and they said to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's something very quickly on a Word document type of thing. Again, don't make it overly complicated. I meet with my head chef and kitchen manager every week. We sit down every Friday and I go over food cost with him. I go over employee cost with him. I go over the clients for the next week and anything that I need him to improve on. And then he gives feedback to me of what he needs me to improve on so that he can do a better job. It's a two-way street. So anything on that?
Yeah, and I'll say that on those one-on-ones, the one-on-ones, whether it's going to be every other week or,
Sure.
you say at some point, then you go to quarterly. I would focus on how are they progressing? How do they feel they're progressing? So yes, how can I, what you had said, how can I make your life better? Or, what do I need to do? But how do you feel you're progressing? Where is it that you want to go? What's the next stage for you? What are you struggling to understand? Because what you're going to do at that point is you're going to have, you're going to give them your undivided attention and vice versa. And you're going to take a vested interest in their growth. And that's going to be so important to retaining the employees. If it's just about what's happening right now, right? There's a burnout factor. Eventually people start burning out, right? And one thing I want to reflect back on that you said, you would pay individuals more. Whenever I'm talking about money, meaning is the other word. There's two M's that come to mind. It's money and meaning. And yes, you can pay employees more, but if there's not meaning attached to it, it's only going to last for so long, right? So take a vested interest when you are talking to them, how they feel they're doing, how they feel they're progressing, document that stuff, have them send something to you so that you're not the one that's documenting, they're the ones documenting. How about that? In the first 90 days, you say a part of your employment is that you're going to send me, I don't know, whatever it is, an email at the end of every week and let me know, what did you learn? How did we do? And what are you looking forward to on that next week? Great. There you go. Aggregate the information. There's a training program.
That's very true. I actually do that with my marketing manager. She sends me an email at the end of every week, and because she works for me full time, and I said I want a summation, and then I ask those 3 questions. But guys, what I don't want you to hear from this is this: it doesn't have to be complicated.
Mm-mm.
Just communicate with them on a regular basis and just ask a few basic questions. How are you doing? What can I help you with? And this is what I see that you can do better. Employees can be your greatest asset or your greatest liability, but you cannot grow without them, is something that I've really realized. You also mentioned too that my employees, it's very strange. They actually don't ever ask for raises. I give them to them, once a year or whenever I think that they need it. But what they appreciate more than anything is just kind of acts of kindness. We will get together and we will have dinner. We will all go to a jam and jelly making class. We will go to a whatever tasting, and I've kind of learned the hard way that I thought I had to shove money at them. And it's really not the case. There's another thing that I really want you guys to understand. There's a phrase that I use when I hire people, because everybody thinks, how do we talk about money? How do I ask them or tell them how much the job is worth or how much they're going to make? And then how do I ask them, well, how much, do you want to make? That's always the elephant in the room. I always start out every interview, if I think that somebody is going to be the potential I want to hire, and I say, look, let's take this off the table now. Only you know how much you need in order to pay your bills and take care of your family. What is that per hour? That's the amount that I want to know. And I have 100% of the time, people have been completely honest with me. Because then I'll ask, well, what did you make at your last job? And they either say, well, I made X, Y, and Z. And it's usually less or right about the same amount than they made before. It's never been over. So it's been asking that question has been fascinating.
Great question.
Yeah. Carrie, I do want to address your question real quick. You said when you find your first employee, how do you pay them? Weekly, every other week? Do you write a check? Do you fill out a W-9? You have to decide if that position, and I'm going to tell you now that legally you're supposed to talk to an accountant about this. You have to decide in that position, are they contract or are they W-2, an hourly employee? That's not something I can tell you. That's something that would have to be discussed with an accountant. But if you give them a place to work and tell them the hours they need to be at work and give them the tools in order to do it, I can tell you that's an employee, not a contractor. Mm-hmm. So you pay them as often as you. I personally, people appreciate in what I do is I pay my employees weekly. There's not a lot of people that do that. Most people choose every other week. That is completely up to you. I have my payroll set up through QuickBooks. My bookkeeper set it up for me, and she manages QuickBooks for me, but it's very simple. I enter their hours. QuickBooks takes out their taxes, does all that other stuff, sends the reports that I have to pay. I have it set up for direct deposit, and there's a few people that want checks. There is actually a whole slew of paperwork that I have my employees fill out, but I don't want that to scare you either. If you will, anybody that's on this call, if you will email me, I'm happy to send you my packet. It doesn't mean it's all going to apply to you because I have things like a credit card authorization form. I have a key to the kitchen that I threaten them with their life if they lose it. I mean, all kinds of things. I have a confidentiality agreement that they have to sign. But there's also there's just some basic forms that literally if you Google like new employee setup, if you don't want to email me, that you will need. So don't be fearful of that. What I would say from past experience is don't try to figure out the taxes and all the stuff yourself. Pay QuickBooks or a payroll service or whatever it is, $30 a month, and have them do it. Will save you a lot less stress. I hope that answers the question. Anything to that, Shawn?
I completely agree, especially about the last one. Don't try and, if you're not an expert in that, don't try and take it on. Yeah.
You talked about whenever we onboard employees, and guys, I know with this next question, you're going to say, well, I don't even have any of that. I can promise you that you do. How do you get them to kind of buy into your brand, your vision, your mission, your purpose? Truly embrace it in the job that they do. And guys, the reason I'm asking this is because we do culinary medicine. That's my brand. That's what I'm known for. People come to us for that. We work with a lot of special dietary needs, medically necessary diets. We are constantly substituting things out the wazoo and still making them taste good. That's what we're known for. I've had to fire some really great chefs, really well known in my community because they made fun of the coconut milk yogurt we had to use instead of the Fage, Greek yogurt or whatever. And, made comments about, there's no way that people would have to eat this way or would have this many food intolerances. So how do you get people to kind of buy into who you are and the type of company that you run, your brand, your mission, what you want to do in the world?
Mm-hmm. I think in that last part, you said something that's key. How do you get them to buy into you? What you said, and then your mission and vision and purpose and all those different things. I think it's key. They will buy into the mission and vision and purpose if they buy into you. And as I say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You have to genuinely care about the employees. You have to genuinely care about them, their well-being, their environment, the opportunity that you're going to provide them as an owner, someone that's going to invest in their growth. When you do that, they buy into you. And maybe that mission that you had initially, maybe it didn't really speak to them, but you do, right? Maybe you do. And because of that, they buy into the mission and they buy into the vision, they buy into the purpose, right? So I think that's very, very critical, is that, do they buy into you? Do your employees buy into you? Second to that, do you have something that's compelling for them? Right? Is it a check the box mission or vision or purpose, or is it something that's compelling? And if it's a check the box, then how can you make it compelling? How can you make it speak to people? based upon who they are and their values. And I think another point is that when you are hiring, it's important that you are asking questions to understand who they are, even on a deeper level as a person, because you have a mission, you have a vision, you have a purpose. Ideally, you want somebody that's going to at least understand it, relate to it, can empathize with it enough to where they can buy into it, right? So I think those are definitely key points. And last thing I'll say is talk about it, right? Talk about that mission. Talk about what you're doing along the way. So if you have a great event, let's say, right? So Deb, you have an event that's going on right now, right? That your employees are doing right now. So you got a great event. Let's just say that you have feedback from the individuals, right? That your clients. It's important you share that with your employees and praise them for the outstanding job and talk to them about how much of a difference they made, even in that person's life for just a fraction of a second, right? So when you have that meaning attached to it, it definitely goes a long way, very much a long way. And it's a combination of a lot of different things that you have to do, and then eventually you have people that are just they will give you blood, sweat, and tears and do anything that you ask them to do for your business.
And that trickles down to everybody in your business. I have a full-time delivery driver. We have a couple of caterings a week, and usually we have about 8 or 9 client families a day that we actually cook for. So I have a delivery driver, and I sat him down and I said, and I talked to him about our vision of what we want to do in the world with Sabre, and talk to him about our mission that we're we are all about healing people through food, and even his philosophies on that, and our customer service philosophies, and that we always say kiss the dog and pet the kid on your way out, because if you compliment somebody on their dog and their kid, they don't really care what the food tastes like. So, it's little things like that make a really big difference. And again, it kind of goes back to, I feel like I spend a lot of time educating, but re-educating, and I feel like almost reminding people of how important these things are. Now, what I also do when I hire people, this is the type of company that we are. This is what we do. Please don't apply if this is not something that you feel like that you're going to be comfortable with. And so it actually weeds out a lot of people right off the bat, so that I don't have to do a lot of education. You either want to come work for us or you don't.
And it goes back to the message that you're putting out there to attract people to begin with. Mm-hmm. The message that you're putting out there.
Your brand, and it goes back to brand, and I hammer that home to just, even if you have no employees or you have a lot of employees, people will buy you for your brand, your products and services. Employees will work for you because of your brand and what you stand for, and that power statement in your business. It's what sets you apart in Google's eyes too, because Google decides who you are in business. To get people to hire you, it's that brand, what you're about, and why you do what you do. That's so powerful. One other question that I'm gonna let people ask a few questions, because I want to respect everybody's time. So if you do have even one employee, or like I said, you have 10, how is it that you go about of really establishing a leader or leaders in the group? How do you go about that?
Yeah, so you as the business owner or a leader of the company or the organization, if you're in a company right now and you're a leader, then there's responsibilities, there's duties that you have, and it goes back to when we said about trust and how you have to work up to that, right? It's the same thing. You give people leadership responsibility, right? Just a few pieces here and there that they can start taking on. Now, I would not do that until somebody is is definitely in the swing of their job, right? They understand their job, they've mastered their job, and a part of the one-on-one conversations that are happening, it naturally, there's a progression where we get to the point where they say that they want more and they want X. And it's almost like I want them to tell me that they're ready for that leadership responsibility because they've mastered their role. And that's part of that one-on-one. Now, when you do that, now start giving them some of those responsibilities. And as I said, with that whole tiered system that I made reference to about trust, right? Your number one priorities in the business, if you mess those up, your business is going down. Number two, they're very close to that. Number three, you've got a recovery period. They're not that bad. Give them some threes and give them an opportunity to take that. And if they make a mistake, that's okay. I mean, from a human behavior standpoint, we learn more from mistakes anyway than successes. Why? Because successes, we anticipate success. So when it happens, we knew it was going to happen, right? We thought it was going to happen. There's no surprise there. We don't look into it deeply. For a mistake, we're surprised. We're shocked, right? So it's that shocking event that jolts you and it makes you look very deeply as to what happened. And you look for those lessons and those opportunities. So you want individuals to make mistakes. You want to support their mistakes, and you want to give them things, responsibilities that they can make mistakes in without messing up the business. And then from there, when they do make the mistakes, talk to them about it, right? You have an educational opportunity with them so that they are learning. And this goes back to what I said about build in your culture that you're helping people grow, helping them grow in some way, shape, form, or fashion capacity, because they're going to work extremely, extremely hard for you. So that's how you do that. If you have a larger team, again, it's very hard with maybe a small team of like one, maybe two, but even you can do it with two or three, but put somebody in charge for a certain period of time, even if you're there, right? Put them in charge of something that you would maybe do, and then you can rotate that. There was things, and again, I understand that some people are just starting out, so maybe if you're just starting out, file this away, and some people maybe have 20, 30 employees. I would have many teams on my team to where there would be a leader inside that mini team, and they knew that they would rotate throughout the year. So I would constantly rotate people in the leadership position. And it was very interesting to see the leaders after a 6-week period turn into followers, and the behavioral pattern that would happen with them, because they would lead for a little while and feel what it's like. And then now they have to go back to their following position. And it was very interesting to see, but I think the best leaders understand how to follow and be in service to others. So that's why I love that system so much, is that you give them some leadership opportunities, you take it away, they have to serve somebody else. And when you have something like that, you really build somebody up from all different angles to where they eventually jump into leadership.
Cool. Guys, there's about 3 minutes left. If there is a question that you had in your mind coming into this call, please put it into the chat if we didn't cover it. We tried to cover a lot of the questions that I hear you guys call me and ask me quite a bit. And one of the biggest ones is fear around, do I have to offer somebody full time, and what if they make a mistake? The thing about it is you have to get started. And I know that scares some of you guys to death, because there's a lot of you on here that are like me that will jump off and develop your wings on the way down and think, well, crap, that didn't work out well. So let's move on. And then some of you guys get into analysis paralysis. I know you do, because I talked to you, and you should have hired somebody 3 years ago, and you know who you are on this call, and you still haven't hired them because you're scared to death to make the first step. You cannot grow. If you really want to exponentially grow your company, you've got to hire employees in order to do it, because I promise you that you're not wearing all the hats well, and you know that you're not. And guys, if there's something, one of the things that somebody told me to do one time is, how do I know when I need employees in my company? I had a mentor one time that told me for 5 days, make a list of everything I do in my company from the time I get up to the time that I go to bed. He then said, highlight the portions highlight the things you absolutely hate doing. Just hate it. Can do it, but hate it. Then you want to take a different highlighter and highlight the things that you should not be doing. that you can pay somebody $9, $10, $12 an hour to do, because if you're doing those things and you charge $100 an hour, then you're losing about $90 an hour. And then highlight the things. So we have don't like doing, shouldn't be doing, and then highlight the things that you just don't want to do anymore. What you should be left with out of every day is only about 20% of the things on that list you should be left that only you should be doing or have to be doing, or just the things that make you money. The other 80% of things should be given away to other people, and those should become your first job descriptions of the things that you hate doing, don't want to do, don't like to do, or should not be doing. That becomes your very first job description. Kind of fascinating when we broke it down that way. Anything?
Brilliant. I love it.
No?
No, absolutely brilliant. I love it. You nailed it. Yeah.
So somebody asked me about your magazine. Are you able to type into the chat?
Yes, I can. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and because I told somebody the name of it personally, but if you will go ahead and put it into the chat for me, and then where they can also, the web address is also where they can go to subscribe to the magazine as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to do one better. And I know we didn't announce this. I didn't say this because I wanted people to be here because they really need help with something as opposed to coming for a gift, if you will. But anybody that's on here, use this link and code and you got a free annual subscription to Entrepreneurial Chef magazine if you want it. So entrepreneurialchef.com/promo. And then the code is WEB7. If you do that, then you'll get a response back from there. You'll be able to log in the app. So it's in Apple and Google. And then you also get it emailed every single month as well. So it's a digital magazine too.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Guys, this magazine is not your typical magazine. This is not something that you're going to pick up and go, well, I just wasted 15 minutes of my time thumbing through that. It is seriously a magazine where people are asking some really hard questions and giving you some very strategic answers to those questions. This isn't full of fluff. It is, I have this problem, this is what I did about it, and here's the way that you need to go about doing it. Somebody asked, Susan, you asked, can you type that in for the download? Yes, that you can go right there, and that is for the magazine as well. So guys, we are going to, you have a Facebook group too, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. So there's the Entrepreneurial Chef Facebook group. The first email that you get is a welcome email. And there's, I think we're about 700-800 people in there. And it's all about is food entrepreneurship, business. So you can literally ask a question that you're struggling with in your business. And there are experts in there. Deb, you're in there. You'll answer from time to time. There's some great people in there that offer some outstanding advice. I'll stoke the fire sometimes. And I think the other day I asked, how do you break into a saturated market? And so we had about 15 people give all of their thoughts on breaking through into a saturated market. And it was everything from there's never a saturated market to find your why and find your voice. And, there was some great information. So I'd encourage you to join it. It's free to join. And I'd love to have you in there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the call today, guys. I hope that you learned a lot of stuff and that we were able to answer all your questions. Mark said that was a really quick sign up. Thanks for posting that, Mark.
Awesome. Yeah. And last thing I'll say about that, if you have questions that you really want answered with some of the people that I'm interviewing, then shoot them over to me. I mean, you'll see the email address, contact@entrepreneurchef.com. I've got an interview with Daniel Ballou, Marcus Samuelson, Fabio Viviani, all coming up in the next couple of weeks, Manit Shahan. If you want a question answered from those individuals, shoot it over to me. I always source from the audience, from the readership, so that I can truly create a platform that's going to help you all.
So guys, take a look. The web address is right there in the chat section. Make sure that you can actually, if you're on your computer, you can actually copy and paste that into your browser very simply. And then you guys are also going to get the recording too, so that you can have it. So Thank you so much again, Shawn, for being on the call today. I know that you helped a ton of people, and we'll be back in touch soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everyone that was here. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.